What's going on? I am Mike Berlin and you are watching Wild Fed Family, and on today's video I'm going to show you how I took this deer and turned it into these cans of long-term food storage that will last for years and years. So a couple weeks ago I made a picture post on Facebook with just a simple method and process, and it got tens of thousands of reactions. That was likes, shares, comments, and through all of that there was a lot of questions. So I want to take all of that, put it into one video, and show you exactly what I did to answer those questions. So as you can see, I'm actually going to be working on this project outside, and I'm going to do that for 3 reasons. 1, it's just a nice day and I want to be outside. 2, when it goes in the canner, it gets a little bit noisy. And 3, I want to show you that if you have a long-term power outage, you can take this meat that's in your freezer and you can go ahead and can it up so that you don't have to worry about it going bad. So the first step is to start with the meat. Now I have a 5-gallon bucket right here, and yesterday I took the time to go ahead and cube it up into 3/4 to 1 inch cubes. Now this is basically 3 different things. This is hindquarters, this is shoulders, and this is neck meat. What I saved and I put into freezer bags and put in the freezer was going to be the shanks, the back straps, and the tenderloins. But between the hindquarters, the shoulders, and the neck, I got a 5-gallon bucket that weighs probably about 80 pounds. And that's just a bunch of meat. So let's get this started and knock it out, because I'm telling you, this is a super easy process. So right here I got 7-quart mason jars, and the reason I'm doing 7 is because that is how many jars my canner will hold. So this is pretty simple. I'm just taking these cubes and I am packing them in these jars. That is 1 jar done, and make sure you leave 1 inch of headspace. That is very important. And one thing that I also forgot to mention is when you are cubing this up, see stuff like that, that's all silver skin and sinews and tendons. Don't worry about trimming that out, because this is so high heat, high pressure that when it cooks, all of that turns into collagen, which is essentially just flavor. It's gonna make it really good. So leave your silver skin, leave your trimming to the minimum, get your fat off, but that's it. So let me fill up the 6 more and we'll go on to the next step. Alright, so moving forward, all I do is I add a teaspoon of salt. Now, if you do a decent amount of cooking, you can kind of tell what a teaspoon of salt is. That's what it looks like in my hand. That's what goes in there. And I'm going to add this to every single one. Now, in the comments that I had on my original post, a lot of people said go ahead and add a bouillon cube instead of salt. Yes, you can do that. A lot of people said add onion or spices, or I put jalapenos in mine. Well, that's great, but what I don't want to do is limit myself to a certain recipe. So I can't use jalapenos in something just like a regular old pot roast type dish that I can make with this. I want it just plain and simple, and I can take it and I can elaborate from that point on. So get seasoned out of this can. This is simply just a flavor enhancer. This is not doing anything for the preservation of this meat. It's just a small amount of salt simply for flavor. What I got next is just white vinegar on a paper towel, and I'm just going to use that to clean up the tops of my cans so that the lids sit on there and create a good seal with nothing obstructing that seal, whether it be small particles of meat or salt or whatever it may be. I just want to get that away. So now that those are all sealed up, I got lids, and we're just going to set these lids on there and put the rings on finger tight. You really don't have to twist them hard. You don't want to twist them hard. because typically you'll end up getting a worse seal. You're just kind of putting them down there and making sure these rings are applying pressure to where that lid just makes contact with the top of the jar, but it's not squeezed down tight on it. But before I get carried away, I'm gonna get this meat back into the refrigerator, keep the flies off, and keep it cold. So if you are going to can meat, you have to have a pressure canner, and this is what this is right next to me. Now, I am not going to tell you that you can water bath this. There's people out there that do, but I do not trust it, and the reason is because in this canner, these cans are going to get to roughly 250 degrees internal temperature. That is way hotter than you can get water. Water boils at 212 degrees. But with the addition of pressure, you're able to increase that temperature and basically superheat this to kill off any sort of botulism spores that will then thrive in an anaerobic environment like this. So if you're going to do this, use a pressure canner. I think this one cost me right around $120. I've had it for the last 3 or 4 years, and I've preserved thousands of dollars worth of food with it. It is totally worth it. Make the investment. But I need to go ahead and add some water. So that's all you need, right about an inch over this grate that the cans are gonna rest on. So water's in. All of these cans, I'm going straight in, and I'm making sure they have a little bit of breathing room in between each other. Now, it is time to cook and preserve. So if you look at recipes in the Ball cookbook or anything like that, typically what you're gonna find is a recipe to brown the meat first and then put it in the can. That just brings up the temperature of the meat just a little bit before the canning process. But to be honest with you, you really don't have to do that. It's gonna heat up thoroughly throughout this entire canning process by cold packing it, raw packing it, and there's other canning guidelines that say you're able to do that. On the other hand, browning it does give you one benefit. It does increase flavor, because what you're doing is you're adding that caramelization on the outside of the meat, and that brownness that you're getting is added flavor just from that direct heat on the pan. But flavor is the only thing you gain. It has nothing to do with the food safety aspects. So I'm gonna keep this on high heat until this thing starts steaming and hissing like crazy. So this is what you're looking for. This is called vent steaming. Now I'm gonna let this do this for about 15 minutes on your typical recipes. It's gonna tell you to let it vent steam for about 10 minutes, but I'm using cold meat, cold cans, and I want to slowly help bring this up to temperature. So I'm gonna set a timer on my phone for 15 minutes, and then we'll move on to the next step. So the 15 minutes is up, and now it is time to add a weight over this pressure relief. So this is just, I don't know, it's probably a couple ounces, 4 or 5 ounces, but that fits right over the top, and it closes off that vent to allow pressure to build. So the nice thing about using that weight is that it automatically accounts for the balance between the pressure inside that canner and the atmospheric pressure. So once that pressure starts to release and pushes that weight up and out, that's when we know that it is under full pressure in a relative amount to the atmospheric pressure, and that's when the canning and preservation process really starts. And you'll see on different canning recipes, if you're within 1,000 feet of sea level. Right now I'm at 450 feet above sea level at my house. That it's going to have different pressures. So this one's going to be 11 pounds for 1,000 feet and below. The higher you get in the atmosphere, it's going to increase pressure weights. But the thing about that weight is that it already accounts for that difference, that pressure difference in the canner and the atmospheric pressure. So although your pressures are going to change based on your altitudes, your canning times are not. So this canner is up to pressure. It is right at 11, 12 pounds. And when this weight starts spinning and hissing, you know to start your timer. So starting a timer for an hour and a half. That is 90 minutes. And for the next hour and a half, I'm gonna make myself useful because there's nothing you have to do at this point. So when your timer goes off, it's done. So I'm gonna go feed my animals, get some stuff done around the house, finish my coffee, and I'll see you back in an hour and a half. So an hour and a half has gone by, and all you want to do is walk up to it, turn off the heat, and leave it as is. Do not remove the weight. Definitely do not unscrew the top because it is slowly losing pressure as it slowly cools, and that's what you want. If you relieve the pressure and relieve the heat too quick, you're not going to get good seals on your jars. So I'm just going to wait for that to cool. It's probably going to take at least an hour. So in the meantime, I'm just going to leave it as is. I'm not going to touch it, and I'm going to go sit in the ground blind, and I will probably see you back tomorrow. All right, so it's been roughly 24 hours, and this is the final result. So it's just been sitting here, slowly cooling, and if I can get this lid off, there we go. Here you go, here's the cans. That right there is good to go. So that's the final product right there. So from this point, take your ring off, and your lid has a good seal. Now you want to store this in your pantry without the ring, and the reason being is because if this did not seal properly, it will allow oxygen inside of your can, and when oxygen gets inside your can, it allows for bacteria growth, and as that bacteria feeds, it produces carbon dioxide and other gases, and it will pop your lid, it will stink, and you will know that this can is bad, do not eat from it. So it's just a safe way of knowing whether or not you got a good seal. So it will seal and stay in your pantry like this for years. So one question that I get asked a lot is, how long is this good for? Now, the FDA says 2 to 3 years, and that is probably true for the quality. So I would try to eat this within the first 2 to 3 years for best flavor results. But how long is it actually good for? Scientifically, I mean, forever. There's no contaminants in there. As long as you have a good seal, that food is preserved for a really long time. But I suggest within the first 2-3 years, try to use it up. So now that you got it canned up, I usually just date it the month and the year, and then it goes right in the pantry. Now I'm gonna go ahead and process another 7 quarts right now. So I'll have 14 total in this batch, and the rest of that cubed up meat, I'm gonna put it in freezer bags and save it for making sausages, ground, and things like that. But this is a great way to preserve your food just for preparedness, and also it's a great way to preserve your food if you have a power outage and you need to free up the stuff in your freezers. So I hope you learned something new, and by the way, it tastes great. The other night I made some venison tips with some peppers and onions over rice with some gravy. It was fantastic. I've made birria tacos with it. And I mean, you can use it for all sorts of stuff. So I hope you learned something. Get in the kitchen, preserve some food, stick your venison in some jars, and save room in your freezer, and be prepared in the process. So that's all I got for this video, and I will see you on the next one.